Yeah, so today is the theme of make, and obviously I just wanted, before we start, I want to say thank you for everyone coming so early, especially because it's so close to Christmas and getting everything done, deadlines and whatnot. Even for us, it's kind of tight on schedule, so it's just really awesome to see so many people come so late in the year. So I think cute photos are a great way to start a presentation, and I don't have a photo of a cat, I've got a photo of me. This is me at age 4. And I think one of the things I'll try and convey today is that the things we make are kind of reflections of who we are. So I wanted to kind of talk a bit about who I am, so you get to know, why I've done what I've done and why I make what I make. So I've always been artistic, and at the same time I've always loved numbers. And there's two things that are pretty hard to kind of combine. So, growing up I wanted to be a cartoonist, I wanted to be a film director, I wanted to be a game designer, but I also wanted to be an engineer. So my compromise, and it was pretty crazy, but my compromise was to do arts and engineering at university. And that's like a silly mix, I don't think anyone should do it, but it kept me sane. And then after working as an engineer for a little bit, I quit 6 months ago to do this crazy startup thing. And that makes me incredibly happy because I'm making something that in a sense, I'm combining the art and the science side of me together finally, and I've bridged that through technology, and I'm doing it for creative people. So that makes me super happy just because I get to make that. But I thought we could start today by just kind of asking ourselves why. Why do we? Briefly outlined a little bit more about what I make before I jump too far. So I'm the design director and co-founder of Swatchmate, and our first product is the Cube, which lets you capture the color of anything. So we built it for designers, and in a sense, I think that kind of makes me someone who makes tools for people who make things. And that, as I said, makes me incredibly happy just to kind of combine those disparate things together finally in one place. But it's important to ask ourselves why. Why do we make things? Why do we bother? It takes a lot of effort to be designers to want to make something out of nothing, to create it. Is it something really deeply intrinsic to us as humans? And then I came across this image, and we kind of think of cavemen as makers. Obviously, they make spears, they make clubs, they make all sorts of things. That's our kind of prototypical maker. And I like this photo because he's almost asking himself, why do I bother? Why am I making all these things I'm making? And I think part of the answer of why we need to make is because it's so essential to the beginning of us as humans. And there's this guy, Louis Volper, who put together a really great book a few years back called 6 Incredible Things Before Breakfast. And one of his things is that he's an evolutionary biologist, so he kind of tries to track the development of the human brain and how that's influenced us and the way we think and the way we interact with our world. And one of his key things is that tool making made us human. And he goes on to talk about the kind of causal brain, which briefly explain is you can infer potential out of inanimate objects. So you can look at a rock and a stick and say, I'm going to combine them, make a club, and that club means I can go out and hunt and feed better and then gain a competitive advantage. So by having that causal brain, which is quite unique to humans, we can in fact infer potential out of these seemingly inanimate things. And that really comes down to making tools. Now, not that humans are the only creatures that make tools, but nothing makes it to the same level. There's no other animal that makes it to the same level as the same complexity as we do. So I thought, well, maybe we'll explore a bit about tools and what that actually means. Now, when you think about tools, at least in my mental model, is a hammer. And I think for most people, kind of when you think it's probably a hammer. And of course, these tools, these prehistoric tools, they do look like hammers, but what else do we see about them that's similar? What do they have in common? Anyone? Be good to kind of get a sense, just throw some ideas out. Anything about these things that's common across all 4 of them or 5 of them? Made of 2 parts? Yeah? Yeah? Anyone else? Shaft, yeah, there's a handle. Yep. What you're saying is that you're describing how they're made in a sense, and you look at them and you can understand how they were made. And I think that's what's common about these simple early tools and the way we developed. We can understand how they were made, and we can look at the sharp, hitty, pointy bit and say that's probably balanced so that it keeps the whole tool, easy to use. The length of the shaft is probably going to depend how it's used. So if it's short, maybe this one down here is for being on your knees and you're kind of digging up some plants and whatever. Maybe the long one you need more momentum to kind of club something with. You can see that there's little handles or notches of wire, or a bit of groove in the handle part, so you can really hold it really tightly. So just by looking at them, you can infer something about who made them, why they made them, and for who they made them. So you get a kind of like really nice cyclical thing about creation and about making things just from these really early tools. And I think obviously nowadays with modern tools that's changed dramatically. So what are some of the tools we use every day as creative designers or as just as people? Obviously we use computers. I'm not going to ask you to kind of throw things at me, so I'll just kind of go through a list. We use drawing tablets, you use 3D printers, which is what you see here, 3D modeling, you code, all sorts of things. And the thing I think that ties the modern tools together, the commonality they have, is that we no longer can understand how they're made. So as opposed to what we had before, the new tools we're using, they're just there. They're kind of presented to us as finished, as done, and they're so complex in the way they operate that no single person really can kind of comprehend the entirety of how they're produced. Now, that means that for the first time, it's this been going on for a little while, obviously since industrialization, but for the first time in humanity, we no longer, the people who make things are no longer necessarily tool makers themselves. So you're potentially just using tools to create your own work, your own creative work. And this isn't a bad thing, I don't think. I think that freeing yourself from the kind of the utility of the object, I think leaves you to then work at a higher level of abstraction. So you can just concentrate and you free the creative side of you to make the things you want to make. And this is all about making things. So when we stop thinking about how it's made and what, just start thinking about what we can do with it, I think that's not such a bad thing. But I do think it kind of leads us to an interesting spot, and that's that, this is Urkel, by the way, the makers are the new geeks. And what I mean by that is that when you don't know how something works or how it's being made, then you don't know how to use it necessarily either. So there's a process of learning that goes on with our modern tools and in the process of making things. And so for me, I think what that means is that we're constantly on a journey of making, of learning as we make. So if you're not prepared to learn, if you're not prepared to kind of discover and challenge yourself and try new things as a modern maker, it's just not going to happen. These things are so complex, and we just have to constantly be willing to learn and to love to learn. And I think I'm going to just rifle through a few of the things that I've learned in the last 6 months since I quit my job. So I've learned about 3D modeling, design for manufacture, hiring people, collaborating, spray booth painting, video production, sound recording, script writing, commercial making, website design, social media, SEO, supply negotiations, pitching to investors, PR, writing press releases, contacting press, acquisition and merger strategies, distributor negotiations, setting up an advisory board, patenting, trademarks, government funding, crowdfunding, running a company, and I've also learned how cheaply you can live off a can of tuna. So I really think that today, like, the central kind of drive that we've got is one of learning, and that's something that we have definitely at Swatchmate held true, and it's something that I kind of I've learned to just embrace. Now I just want to quickly hit upon that one of the things I mentioned there, which was crowdfunding and the idea of making money. So as some of you probably know, we've got our product right now, the Cube, on Kickstarter, and it's actually I think it's down to the last 8 hours. We're finishing at 5 p.m. I'm going to give you just a quick rundown on our stats. Just like, what does it actually mean to raise money now as a creative? When you've made something, what does it actually mean? So we've got 8 hours to go, and we've raised just under $93,000 in 37 days, and our goal was $55,000, and that's through 993 backers. Including some people that, backers who are actually here amongst us, and to those people, deep thank you. But I think what I'm trying to bring up here is that crowdfunding is a fascinating place for makers to be in, and it's kind of, once you start thinking about crowdfunding in terms of making things, that it really becomes a fascinating kind of new step for humanity, if I can be so bold. Probably not, but I'll try. And partly it's because you're being backed for something you've made in order to make more things. And that is like a fucking awesome thing. Starting out, kind of, we're just doing it by ourselves at home, and or in your garage or in your bedroom or wherever, and you're just doing it for yourself. But then having people support you and say, I actually want you to make more things, is just incredible. And I think that, for me, I see it more as kind of crowd loaning. So I'm just kind of borrowing that money in order to then provide more back, to give back. And when we started, we didn't think, for that goal of 55,000, we actually were pretty certain that we would have lost money in the end, because it's kind of like, you just don't know what it means to go through that process. Now it's potentially a different question once we've raised almost double our goal, but I think it's still going to be that pleasant stress of making so many of these things. We've only ever made 25, 30 odd, and now we have to make 1,000, and that's a crazy new thing for us. And I think that's new for creatives, that you can give yourself that next platform, next push to actually create a whole bunch of new things. And I just want to wrap up this with this slide by saying that as geeks, we're kind of like the kind of like economic driver of the late 20th and early 21st century. It's now the makers who are going to be the drivers for the next push, who are going to be just freed and liberated through the tools that they use to actually create and find new sources of funding and create more things. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. So one of the things I wanted to show, if we can just shoot through the video, it's the next slide, and then if I click through one more time, it starts playing.
Sometimes it's important to find the right color. At Swatchmate, we think color is amazing. So we started thinking, we love the colors that inspire us, so what if we could interact with them? We created the cube. Small, beautiful, and easy to use. Just place it on an object to record the color, and pair it with your phone to see the result. Color is everywhere. Inspiration is anywhere. And now you can bring real-world color into your favorite design software. Whatever you scan becomes your primary color, so you can get on with being great.
The cube contains a unique sphere. When light is shone on the surface, the sphere captures all reflected color information. This means you can capture the color of virtually anything. And best of all, it stores up to 20 colors even without your phone. Now it's easy to share inspiration. When the world is your canvas, what will you capture?
Yeah, we put that together in a week with no plan and super tight time frame, and helpful people at I9 and all over the place, and all of our friends. And that's part of the thing kind of I want to bring up, is that just by giving yourself deadlines and having this kind of thing that you want to make, you just do crazy things, and it actually turns out kind of okay sometimes. It's not going to win an Academy Award, but it's fine for my first, or our first shot at making a promotional thing. So on that front, I wanted to kind of talk about what making has taught me. So we have to learn to be able to be makers now, but I think we also get taught a great deal just by making things. And one of the things I've definitely learned in the last 6 months is that that's totally fine to procrastinate. Totally fine. Do not stress. I mean, you're gonna feel stressed, but accept it. And to give you an example of that, I put this talk together at 3 a.m. last night, and I woke up at 5. Not to kind of become oh, sorry, sorry to be me. But I've learned that that's the way I work. That I have this kind of thing that I need to do, and I can push myself to do it ahead of time, but it's never going to feel right, and only when I have to do it, when I feel like it's time, does it actually come out the way it does. And so far it's never been a massive flop, which, I don't think, when you have to hand in your final essay at university or whatever, it tends to not be a massive flop. You kind of, and it reinforces that negative behavior perhaps. But what I've learned is that it's kind of, that's the way I am, and I'm happy about it. So I kind of leave things to the end now, and that's, I don't know, that's just me. I heard a really kind of interesting idea, is that you have as much, any task you're doing, you make it as complex as the time you allow it. So if you give it a week, it's going to take a week because you're going to, it's crazy, you know. It's going to have all this stuff that you don't need. You give it a day, it's going to perform just as well, but just be like way simpler, and suddenly you can do it. So I actually kind of have taken it on board a bit and be like, okay, I'm going to give myself no time and see how simple I can get things. And it's worked out okay. And then one of the other things I talked about that I've taught myself through making things is that I actually can't make anything on my own. And this is maybe a hard thing to realize, but something that I've again accepted and now like actually really enjoy. That I used to feel like I had to do all the engineering and the technical side, and I had to be on board on top of all of our like media and the way we pitch and all sorts of crazy things. But I've kind of realized that I can't do any of that on my own, and actually, if I just stick to what I think I'm good at, or what I like, which is designing things and thinking up new strategies for our product, that I have to rely, therefore, on my co-founders who are going to do the technical work, who love to do it, and who do it so much better than I do. And they really do, and they always have. So that means that as a maker, as a creator, I can't really be doing that without them. And that's something that was maybe an obvious realization, but it took a while for me, and it makes me a lot happier now that I've just kind of let that go. The last thing that's taught me is that making things, you get to then make more things. And what that means is that when you take control of the process of making things, you can therefore feel like you're stagnant if you don't do enough challenging things over a while. So actually doing this talk for me is actually, maybe it's not surprising, depends how I appear, but it's a challenge. And I'd never done a public speaking thing before. So I've decided to do it because after a while I feel like, I've not challenged myself enough over time, and so now I should do that next crazy thing to push myself to make that next crazy thing. And it could be anything. It could be like a new tool. It could be a new or a side project you've kept on the back burner for years. But something that you can take ownership of and say, okay, I'm going to try that next crazy thing, means that you're going to learn from it like a ton. And that's something that I've taken, that I've kind of learned from just from making things. Basically, having a crack at it is kind of the thing. And then just to wrap up. As I said before, the things we make reflect who we are, and I think that's true. But I think also that the things we make change us and make us different, make us better. Since quitting my job, I'm infinitely happier, and that's for a variety of reasons, but partly because I'm constantly making things. And when you have that sense of completion, you have a sense of like you've done something, it makes you feel like you've not wasted time, for me at least. And I get to combine the things I love to create things for people I care about. So to wrap it up, just make it. Just make it. Simple. Thanks.
We got about 5 minutes for questions, so if anyone has one, just fire away for George. Yes.
So where can we buy the cube? Sounds awesome.
Where can you buy one? I hate to promote it here.
We haven't made it yet.
No, I'm saying I hate to promote it in front of everyone, but it's on Kickstarter right now. So if you search for the Cube, Swatchmate or Cube, you'll be able to find it. And it's June. We're going to ship them in June. Yeah.
Would that be good for interior designers, like if you're trying to match existing wall colours?
Yeah. Yeah, so we spent a bunch of time, and there's a few people in here we've actually worked with, designers and big design firms. We kind of went out and said, we've got this idea, and we kind of came from an engineering place where we're like, it's got to be practical and have an application. And then by working with super creative people, like designers, we actually figured out that all you need to say is that it captures color, and then people just run with it. And if they use it as their design, as their creative process, if they think about color, if they care about it, and they get inspired by it, they're gonna know what to do with it. So yeah, interior designers have been a big kind of inspiration for us, and they're definitely one of them.
Does it still match the Deluxe and Pantone swatches?
Doesn't do Pantone. If Pantone's watching, they sent us a cease and desist, so we had to stop using Pantone, which is fair enough. I mean, they're a pretty big brand, but Dulux and a bunch of other paint brands in Australia and America, UK, yeah, we match, so you can capture something and match it straight to that paint brand in the app, which is kind of neat, yeah. Yep.
How long did you have the concept sitting in the back of your head before you started to jump ship?
I don't think, it's not a very inspirational story. It wasn't that long actually. We started as a university project, a final year project, and we finally got like given a year to make something, just the three of us, with kind of no one looking over us and guiding us. And so we had a bunch of things we could select, but we thought we'd make something of our own. So we thought capturing color is actually a really kind of technical problem. Let's see if we can do that. So literally that was the reason why we started. And then we just kind of kept snowballing, so it's a big experiment really. Started from just trying to make something. Yeah.
Any other questions? In back?
Is the colour that's recorded influenced by the type of light that's sitting on the surface? So if it's dark, we get a dark colour. If it's bright, we get a bright colour.
Yeah, so as you probably saw in the video, you place it directly onto the object, and that means you're kind of blocking out ambient light, and we have an internal light source, and that's what was shown in that animation. So you kind of, so if it's like daylight or, these tungsten lights, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's capturing the color of the surface using our own controlled lighting. Yeah.
Just out of all the ideas that you had, how did you zero in that this is the one that you were going to concentrate on?
I was in Canada at the time, and Paul and Rocky were here in Melbourne, and we were literally just Google Docs, just like shooting emails back and forth and like going through some ideas. And then we thought, well, we were kind of naive. Like some of you probably know that there are devices that do this already, but they're just really expensive. That's just a whole different thing. But we didn't know anything existed. We thought that's actually like, never heard of that. Let's try to do that. And being naive, we ended up doing it in a different way than anyone else had done it before, which is, lucky. But we knew that we wanted to do it just because we thought, it's a really technical problem, and it had some creative side to it, which even then I kind of recognized I had to have more of. There was a sense of like it's going to actually be used for something creative, and color is definitely creative. And that, all of our other ideas sucked. Maybe, yeah.
Curious more about this Pantone thing. Like, wouldn't Pantone be like benefiting from someone like if their colors are being to be used in other applications?
Yeah, so I'll give Pantone got bought by a big company called X-Rite, like a multi-conglomerate. And they got bought by an even bigger company. But X-Rite, it's like fish. But X-Rite makes a device like ours. They're kind of like a color company, and that's why they bought Pantone. And so they've released a Pantone device that only matches the Pantone. And it's super expensive, it's like $1,000 plus. It's really good, but it's also $1,000, and it's only Pantone. So they don't want, a cheap upstart like us coming through and being like, yeah, we can do the same thing for 1/10 the price. So they've said, no, not interested at all, which, would be great for us, but not for them, so.